We have the public information officer from the Boone County Sheriff's Department coming back over to where Sean is, and we're going to get an update right now.
Ready?
Yep, ready.
All right, so brief update. The scene is safe. We now have a criminal investigation taking place. The suspect is deceased, self-inflicted gunshot wound. We verified that he was deceased upstairs. Our SWAT team went up and cleared that, and then from there we're treating it like any other incident where we have somebody who's deceased in a critical incident like this, and that's kind of where everything stands. As far as to your earlier question about residents, we did deploy gas canisters early on in this, so there may be still some contamination in those surrounding areas. With any residents who are still around here or watching, we would just caution them, but we will get them back into their homes very quickly.
Did you ever make contact with him?
We never made any kind of contact. He didn't respond, obviously, to the gas canisters. There was some information that we had received via social media, some reports that we had received. We're looking into that about some videos that he may have posted. So we're working to verify some of that information. However, we can confirm that he is in fact deceased.
Is there anything more you can tell us about what led to that major presence to serve that warrant originally?
No, other than it was a felony warrant, and he wasn't, I guess, responding. I can't really speak definitively as to the presence or how many people were there or why so many people were there. We've got to kind of sift through all of those aspects.
And how are the two deputies doing that are in the hospital?
They're stable. They're doing well. I'm happy to report that albeit they were shot, it could have been a whole lot worse, and their prognosis is pretty positive right now.
Outside of deputies, is there anyone else that was injured or transported?
No, and I'm glad you asked that, because we did canvass the entire area. We accounted for all of the residents in that complex in kind of his row next to him and really adjacent in the direction that he would have been firing out. And all residents, as far as we know, are accounted for. There are no other reported injuries, and there are no other persons inside of any one of those units.
We're hearing reports that someone was transported to St. E. Is that at all accurate?
Not that
situation.
Not that I'm aware of. No.
Was there anyone else in his apartment at any point tonight?
No, he was the only person located inside of his own place.
Has his family been contacted at all?
No. We'll work on that with the Boone County coroner and notifying next of kin, and then we'll release his information when appropriate.
Is there an exact moment you can share when officers realized that he took his own life?
No, we don't have anything definitive on that as of right now. Again, we believe that there may be some kind of video that exists. We received multiple reports about that, and we're going to verify that. But as far as that timing, I suspect that our investigation will yield some of those facts.
Will there be an update at or from the hospital tonight on the deputies?
We are heading up. As you can imagine, a lot of us are going to head up. We will provide an update, whether it be on camera or via press release, but there will be an update on our deputies forthcoming once, assuming they're discharged and assuming that their prognosis remains positive.
You mentioned gas canisters tonight. Those were deployed into his apartment?
Correct. That's one of the procedures to try to generate a response, to try to get somebody just to exit on their own terms, albeit they have an incentive to get out. It's very tough to, of course, breathe in those types of environments, but he didn't respond. That, in conjunction with, as I stated, those videos, no response, plus some of that information led us to believe that he could have been deceased. And then we utilized a drone, and we sent a drone up through to the second floor, and we were able to confirm that visually that he was in fact down in one of the bedrooms.
Did he talk to you guys at all, or the negotiator, through any of this?
Not that I'm aware of. No, we didn't get much of a response from him except in the initial encounter.
What did he shout anything in that initial encounter?
When they initially showed up, he corresponded to them through some kind of doorbell camera or some kind of camera system. But beyond that, there was no other conversations that I'm aware of.
Thank you for your service.
What was do you know the name of the apartment complex he was living in?
I don't know the name of it, other than it's just right up here on Service Road. I don't know the complex name though.
Again, can you just touch on how those deputies are stable right now?
Yeah, they're all things considered. You know, when you hear that two of our deputies were shot multiple times, you're going to assume the worst. The mere fact that, you know, we get good news and we get confirmed good news only slightly brings some positive light to this situation, considering how this whole thing transpired tonight.
And again, is there an estimated time for the residents that they'll be able to get back to their homes tonight?
No estimated time, but as I touched on earlier, what we want to ensure that everyone's crystal clear on, whether it's directly in a unit right next to or just in the complex as a whole, that, you know, we did deploy those gas canisters and those are irritants, you know, so if anyone were to rush back into the home, there could still be some remnants of that, but beyond that, we plan on getting them back into their homes as quickly as possible. Their nights, like everyone else's, was very much disrupted. It's a very scary scene, and, you know, we want to get them back into a place where hopefully they can feel safe.
When we talked earlier, you said both in stable condition. One was in surgery. Is that one deputy out of surgery?
He is out of surgery, and, you know, as I said, you know, it was, from what I understand, kind of an exploratory surgery to ensure that there wasn't any damage that wasn't apparent from the outside, and from what we understand, there wasn't. And once he got out of surgery, then they started, you know, getting him healed up and getting him stable, and their families are up there with them. And of course, we have, between Northern Kentucky agencies, of course the Boone County Sheriff's Office and the Cincinnati Police Department, maybe even others up there in a support staff as well.
Thank you. How many units do you think responded
Tonight?
Yeah, tonight.
It's hard to say. I mean, it was quite a response. We had law enforcement truly from all over Northern Kentucky, Kenton County agencies, I think Campbell County agencies, of course, Boone County agencies. I'm pretty sure everyone that polices in the Northern Kentucky region offered their support tonight, and for that we're very thankful and we're very appreciative.
Did he attempt to send messages out on social media tonight?
Other than these reported videos, I'm not aware of any messages. I'm not aware of any additional posts. You know, of course, we were trying to see if we could see anything that was maybe publicly available. We were unable to do that. So we'll just use the process, the legal process, through those social media platforms to try to verify some of the things that have been reported to us.
We're negotiators with Boone County Sheriff's Office.
Yes, they're a part of, they're a subsect of our SWAT team, and so when the SWAT team's deployed, so too are our negotiators, and they were making announcements right up until we confirmed that he was down in his bedroom.
And what time was that at, do you know?
I don't have an exact time, but within the last, I would say, hour or so.
Any other guns recovered in the home?
No, other than, you know, there was one confirmed firearm recovered next to him. Beyond any other firearms that he may have possessed, we'll sort through that.